Okay, hi, welcome to Christchurch podcast. So this is the first time we've ever recorded a sermon, so we'll see how it goes. Great, I'm just going to pray to start, and the prayer that I'm going to use is by a guy called Tozer that some of you may have heard of and some of you might not, but he, one of his big things was about praying for more of God and asking God to help us to be more hungry for him. So he says, God, I have tasted your goodness, and it has both satisfied me and made me thirsty for more. I am painfully conscious of my need of further grace. I am ashamed of my lack of desire. O God, the triune God, I want to want you. I long to be filled with longing. I thirst to be made more thirsty still. Show me your glory, I pray, so that I may know you indeed. Begin in mercy a new work of love within me. Give me grace to rise and follow you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so my family are not Christians, and my mum's not a Christian, and we were staying with her a couple of weekends ago because Hamish and my dad were destroying our drive, and my mum asked me if I wanted to go to church on Sunday, and I said no, it's fine, me and the girls will hang out with you. And I think for my mum, who is not a Christian, going to church on Sunday is kind of what Christians do, and for her she was almost a little bit worried about it and unsure about why we weren't going. And I think that got me thinking, because for me, although Sundays are really important and I love coming to Christchurch, I love seeing my church family and being welcomed and loved and being like sharing faith together, actually faith isn't really about Sundays, and it isn't really the thing that sustains me. So what we do as Christians from Monday morning through to Saturday night, that's got to sustain us, not just what happens on a Sunday. And so part of the current sermon series that we're in is thinking about what it means to be a disciple or a learner of Jesus throughout the whole week. What are our lives meant to look like in between Sundays? What kind of things can we do when we're not in church that will help to deepen our relationship with God? So when I was at uni, many years ago, I'd been out clubbing with a good friend of mine called Lizzie. And we got home at some point in the early hours of the morning. We were having a cup of tea and eating toast. And she got up and she said, oh, I need to go now because otherwise I won't be able to get up early to spend time with God. And as like a 21-year-old, that just blew my mind, because I'd never heard anyone say anything like that, especially not someone who was out clubbing. And yeah, it got me thinking that really, although I've been a Christian for a few years and I loved God and I loved church, it didn't really occur to me that there are things I could be doing in my daily life that could help deepen my relationship with God. I loved this Christian group of friends that I got, but it didn't really occur to me that the gift that Jesus gives us on the cross is so much bigger and wilder and more beautiful than we can imagine, that he gives us the gift of a relationship with the one who made us and the one who loves us, and the gift of a life that can be transformed by that relationship. So the more I thought about it, the more it made sense that if Jesus died on a cross to heal a broken relationship with God, then sustaining and deepening that relationship was going to require some kind of effort on my part. And I want to be clear here, it wasn't that I needed to do something to earn God's love in the first place. I had his love already and completely, but if I wanted to experience God's love more fully, if I wanted to know him more deeply, then Sundays were not going to be enough. If I only spoke to Hamish, my husband, on a Sunday and never spoke to him throughout the week, that is not a recipe for a very good marriage. If I only talk to my children on a Monday morning and never at any other point, that's not a good recipe for family life. So I really realised that I wanted to know God in the way that I saw Jesus knowing him. Now, Jesus calls God his Father. And when you look at the life of Jesus in the scriptures, in the gospels that are written about his life, what I started to see was a man who lived every moment with God. So we see the life of a man who is in constant communion with God the Father, and that life is just so beautiful and so compelling. So Jesus is someone who knows how to love and laugh and give and be generous. And he is someone who knows without a shadow of doubt that he is loved. He's completely secure in his identity, and he doesn't worry about what others think or hi Hamish, I'm just doing the thing. Okay. He doesn't worry about what others think or kind of how they feel about him. So he doesn't worry about whether he's got enough money. He's not obsessed by the way he looks or what others think about him. He's never jealous. He never judges anyone. He is able to give boundlessly to the poor, and he loves everyone unconditionally, regardless of whether they're likable or not. And when I look at Jesus, I think I want that kind of life. I want the kind of life that is defined by a relationship with God, and I want everything that flows out of that, the love, the joy, the peace. And I started to long for that kind of relationship, the relationship that God and Jesus share, and the life that comes out of it. And I think the word that Jesus uses to describe those who are following him is not a Christian, it's a disciple. And he expects those who are following him to learn from him. So this beautiful quote, and I'll read it in the Message version of the Bible, but Jesus just says, are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Then come to me. Get away with me and you'll discover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And I realised in that moment with Lizzie, back when I was 21, that I wasn't really keeping company with Jesus throughout the week. So how could I expect to have the lifestyle of Jesus? How could I expect the joy and the peace that I saw in his life if I wasn't keeping company with him? And over the next few weeks, a few of us are going to share like the habits that we've learned over the years that help us to keep company with God. Things that we've learned from following Jesus that enable us to grow in our relationship with God and help us to become the kind of people that God made us to be, and actually the kind of people that this world needs us to be. So the psalm that I kind of chose as today's reading, which I probably should have read at the start of this, was Psalm 62. You should go and read it, it's a great psalm. But the line of it that I really wanted to focus on is where it says, pour out your heart, you people. So pour your heart out to God because he is our refuge. And I guess the habit that I found helpful in my walking with Jesus is just this habit of pouring out my heart before God. On Sunday at Christchurch, we were looking at a memory verse, and the verse is, leave all your worries with him because he cares for you. And again, I think the reason why I chose that is because that is something that I've been trying to learn to do for the past however many years, is to leave stuff with God and to tell God where I'm at and to give him my worries. And it is a habit that I just see beautifully in the life of Jesus. The other reading that I picked for Sunday is a story of John the Baptist. So John is Jesus' cousin, and John is brutally murdered by Herod. He's beheaded. And when Jesus finds out about this, he withdraws from the crowd. He goes away to spend time with God, his heavenly Father. And it is a pattern that you see again and again in the scriptures, that Jesus, no matter what he's doing, when he needs to, he just runs to pray. And quite often people are a bit offended because they're like, Jesus, this is not a good time for you to be somewhere else. But Jesus knows when he needs to spend time with his Father. And throughout the scriptures, we just see this habit that he withdraws and he goes away because he knows his soul needs replenishing. And so since the early that kind of conversation in the early hours with Lizzie over a decade ago, I've tried to make this my habit too. And for me, it looks like something that I'm going to call journaling, which is basically having a book and writing down the stuff that's in my head and in my heart. And not everybody here is a writer, and this might not work for you. So what I want to try and give people is a set of principles about this idea of how we can pour out our hearts to God and what that might look like. So my journal is a mess, and I was going to bring one to church on Sunday, and I thought I can't even let anybody else anywhere near that because it's just full of doodles and prayers and sketches and shouting and rants, and it's things that are so deeply painful and honest that I really wouldn't want to let anyone else read. But that's actually me and God, and it's between me and God, and it's the space that I need to sustain my relationship with him. So let's go for the principles. So there's 4. The first one is picking a time of day that you're going to try and spend with God and sticking to it. And for most of us, this is the really hard part because we're busy, our lives are chaotic, we have family and friends and jobs and shifts, and it's quite difficult to find that time. But for me, that has been just absolutely crucial. And it was easier before I had a husband, and it was easier before I had kids. So when I worked, when I had a full-time job as a teacher, I used to get up early every morning, and that was my time. It was sacred time. Before I went into the classroom, I'd spend time with God. And people that know me will know that I'm like now slightly obsessed with my kids napping, and like partly that's because I'm a control freak. Partly is because that is the time of day now that I have, because I'm too tired in the evenings and I'm not getting up any earlier than I have to commit to spending time with God. And so, yeah, again, people that know me will know I don't really answer my phone between 1 and 2 o'clock, because that's my sacred space. That's when I commit to being with God. So like step one, like find a time, put it in your Google Calendar, like earmark it as I'm not going to compromise on this. And so the second one is to remove distractions. And for me, this is my phone, and it's not the same thing for everybody, but for me, it really is my phone. I cannot pray while my phone is next to me. Apparently there's been a study done that when your phone is next to you, it increases your anxiety. And I feel that because when my phone is next to me, I'm waiting for a text, or I want to check the news, or just see what someone's put on Instagram. And so when I pray, I take my phone, I put it on silent, and I put it in the next room, because it can wait. Like whatever it is, it can wait. So step one, like find a time. Step two, get rid of the distractions. Step three, like use a springboard. And kind of what I mean by that is when we're surrounded by this world and everything in it, it's quite hard to then withdraw from it and immediately be like, right, I'm in my prayer zone. So what I try and do is two things. First one is I find the Psalms really helpful. Psalms are like in the middle section of the Bible. They're like a prayer book, and like kind of like songs, a bit like a journal really of someone crying out to God. And so I often start my time with God by reading a psalm to sort of kind of propel me, I guess, like towards his presence. And the second thing is Thanksgiving. Like we live in a culture that is so negative and so cynical and so angry and cross at everyone and everything. And it's really easy to just complain all the time. And so the habit of Thanksgiving is really, really powerful. So in my journal, quite often the start of my like entry will be just 10 things I want to say thank you for. So like my cup of coffee, like my kids, the fact that it's sunny, the fact that it's raining, like anything and everything. Like I just make that a discipline of writing it down, so that I'm kind of removing like the influence of the world, I guess, and focusing on the goodness of God and everything that he's given me. And the fourth thing and the final thing is just be honest. Like what I love about Psalm 62 and what I love about Jesus is that he is painfully honest all the time. And in Psalm 62, the guy who's writing it, 1 minute he's like trying to be calm and quiet and finding rest in God and praising God. And the next he's like, no, seriously, God, like when are you going to do something about these people that don't like me? And there's just such a level of like really, really like real, deep, raw honesty. And that's humans. That's what we're like. And so my journals are just like a pouring out of where I'm at. And I love reading them back sometimes because I can see like the progression of what God's done and prayers he's answered. But sometimes reading them back is really painful because I think I can't believe I said that to God. But, you know, he knew it was in my heart anyway, so it's okay. So yeah, 4 things. 1, find a time. 2, I can't remember my own things. 1, find a time. 2, like get rid of the distractions. 3, use a springboard like a psalm or Thanksgiving. And 4, just be honest with God. He knows you, he made you, he knows exactly what you're feeling, so just tell him where you're at. So finally, I want to finish today with just like a word of warning, and I was a bit worried that this was going to be ranty, so forgive me, and I'm sorry if it's ranty, but someone much wiser than me once said that the things that we do something to us. And it sounds obvious, but I think it's really important that what we spend our time doing, our habits, they are doing something to us. And there is a noticeable difference in my life between before and after I spend time with God. And I think my kids see that in me, that I need to spend time with God, because when I do, it's doing something to my soul. But in the same way, like if I'm doing something else, that is also doing something to my soul. So Jesus called his followers disciple because they were meant to learn from him. Their lives are meant to be formed around him. But the reality is that we're all disciples of something. We're all being shaped and formed by something, even if we don't realise it. And this culture that we live in is so good at making disciples. Adverts are really good at making you want stuff you don't need. Facebook is really good at making you unhappy and envious. Like Instagram is really good at making you feel fat and ugly. And the news is really good at making you cross and anxious. you hang around with the same people who complain and gossip all the time, you are going to become someone who complains and gossips. And the things that we do, the things that we surround ourselves with, they are doing something to us. So that's why Jesus' followers spent as much time as they possibly could with him. Like every waking minute of the day, they spent with him. They spent that time learning from him, because Jesus was trying to show them a different way of living. But that way of living is going to take effort, and it is so in conflict to the way that the world lives. It's an effort for me to put my phone away. And I know that's not something that everyone struggles with, but for me, it's an effort to put my phone away and pray. It's an effort for me to stop looking on Amazon about what I'm going to buy for my daughter's birthday and remember that the main thing is that she needs to know that I love her, and that's not about what I buy her. And it's an effort for me to not worry about the way that I look, and to tell myself the truth that God's perception of beauty is inside, not outside. But when I turn to God, I'm changed and I'm restored and I am renewed, and my soul is like content and finds peace in him. But that's not by default. And I just really think that we need to hear this, that what we are doing is doing stuff to us. And again, like, I know for me, this is about social media. It's about the news. And that's not the thing that everyone struggles with. But what we surround our lives with, that is influencing like who we are. That's influencing how we feel. And that is why Jesus calls us to come to him, to make time with him. So I started like my little preach today by just reading from Tozer. And for some people here, like, you might watch this and think, you know what, Nick, I don't even want that. I don't want to give up time on Facebook. I don't want to give up any of my week, my sleep, my schedule, my habits to spend time with God. And if that's you, I just urge you, like, ask God to make you hungry. Like, ask God to help you to want to spend time with him, because in spending time with him, like, you are changed. In spending time with him, you are renewed. And that is the place of transformation. It's not a Sunday morning. It's day by day throughout the week. As we spend time with God, we are transformed into his image to become the people that he made us to be.